The flash of cameras lit up the Tesla conference hall like a lightning storm. Elon Musk adjusted the microphone with his usual calm precision. Behind him, screens displayed the new Solar City project, a vision for a greener future. But the questions weren't about innovation that day. They were about blood. A reporter near the front, smirking behind his notebook, stood and spoke loudly. "Mr. Musk, how do you reconcile your mission to save the planet when your own father, Errol Musk, has such a complicated history?" The room tensed. Murmurs spread. Phones lifted to record. The air thickened. Another reporter jumped in. "Wasn't your father convicted of crimes in South Africa? How can you preach ethics with that legacy?" A third. "Does your success come at the cost of ignoring your past?" The attacks came not as questions, but as accusations, thinly veiled. Elon's jaw tightened. He knew this was coming, but knowing didn't make it sting less. He looked briefly to the side, where Errol Musk sat quietly, eyes cast downward, hands trembling slightly in his lap. It wasn't just humiliation they were aiming for. It was destruction. For a moment, Elon said nothing. The cameras zoomed in. The world waited, waiting to see if Elon Musk, the world's boldest visionary, would flinch. But he didn't. Instead, he leaned into the microphone, voice low, calm, and sharper than any blade. "My father is not a perfect man," Elon said. "But the measure of a man isn't whether he has scars." He paused. "It's whether he tries to heal them." The room froze. And in that silence, Elon Musk prepared to turn their attack into something they could never have predicted, a revolution of loyalty. Elon leaned closer to the mic, his voice steady but charged with something deeper. Not anger, conviction. "You want to dig into my family history?" he said, scanning the room. "Fine." A ripple ran through the journalists. They thought they had baited him. They thought he would lash out or evade. Instead, he stood taller. "My father made mistakes," Elon continued. "Real ones, not PR scandals, not mistakes you apologize for once on Twitter and move on." He let that sink in. He lived through a time in a country where survival twisted people, where systems were built to break you or corrupt you. Murmurs grew softer now. Some cameras lowered. Some reporters shifted uncomfortably. "But he taught me two things," Elon said, voice gaining quiet force. "First, the future is bigger than our past. Second, you don't abandon the people who made you possible, even when it's easier to pretend you don't know them." He turned slightly, eyes finding Errol across the room. "My father was not perfect," Elon said again, softer now. "But he built with his hands. He dreamed when dreaming was dangerous, and he raised a son who would not run when loyalty became inconvenient." For a long moment, the room was still. Not because the reporters were satisfied, not because they agreed, but because they had nothing left to throw. Elon straightened, adjusted the mic one last time, and said, "If you're looking for someone to humiliate my father for you," a pause, a spark in his eyes, "you're going to be disappointed." The clip hit the internet before Elon even left the stage. No edits, no flashy intros, just Elon Musk, standing firm, defending the man who had shaped him, scars and all. Within hours, hashtags exploded. #loyalty. Over perfection, family first, stand with Errol journalists tried to spin the story. Headlines attempted to frame Elon's speech as defiant, controversial, polarizing. But it was too late. People had seen the rawness, the humanity, and they responded. Stories flooded social media. A daughter visiting her estranged father in hospice after 5 years of silence. A son repairing a broken relationship with a mother he'd written off as too complicated. Families reuniting. Old wounds stitched back together, not because they were erased, but because someone dared to say, "We don't abandon the people who made us." Across community centers, schools, and churches, discussions sprang up. Posters appeared. Build the future, carry the past. And somewhere, in a tiny town Elon would never visit, a boy stood at his father's auto shop door, a father he hadn't spoken to in years, and said, "I'm ready to try again." It wasn't just about Elon anymore. It wasn't just about Errol. It was about every family that had broken under the weight of mistakes, and finally realized forgiveness was a building material, not a weakness, a blueprint. Later that night, after the reporters had gone, after the lights of the conference hall had dimmed, Elon found Errol sitting alone in a small side room. The older man's shoulders were slumped. His hands, rough from decades of building and fixing, trembled slightly in his lap. He didn't look up when Elon entered. He didn't have to. He simply said, voice low and cracking, "You didn't have to defend me." Elon stood silent for a moment, studying the man who had taught him to weld, to think sideways, to dream forward even when the ground crumbled under his feet. "I know," Elon finally said. He pulled a chair closer and sat down beside him. "You made mistakes," Elon said plainly. "No one's pretending otherwise." Errol gave a hollow chuckle. "More than my fair share," he muttered. "But," Elon continued, "you also gave me everything that mattered." He paused. Curiosity, grit, the ability to stand when the world pushes. Errol blinked rapidly, fighting the heat behind his eyes. "I wasn't a good man," he whispered. Elon shook his head. "You were my father," he said simply, "and that's enough." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The hum of the city outside buzzed against the windows. The echoes of the day's chaos faded into the corners. Finally, Errol wiped at his face, laughing shakily. "You're stubborn as hell, boy." Elon smiled. "Wonder where I got that from." And in that small, quiet room, without apologies, without excuses, a lifetime of broken moments, found peace. The next morning, Elon's speech wasn't just trending. It was a spark that ignited a movement. Across cities and small towns, across dinner tables and crowded trains, people started talking about loyalty, about what it meant to stand with the people who shaped them, even when those people were flawed. Nonprofits picked up the momentum. Family First became a campaign overnight. Billboards popped up in New York, Chicago, San Francisco. "We don't erase, we embrace." Celebrities shared their own messy family stories. Athletes posted photos with estranged parents, simply captioned, "Still my family." News outlets tried to reframe the narrative. Some called it sentimental. Others said it was dangerous idealism. But it didn't matter. Because it wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about remembering that love wasn't conditional. That loyalty didn't expire when things got hard. At Tesla and SpaceX offices, employees started family walls, where they pinned old photos, some beautiful, some messy, all real. At schools, teachers held assemblies where kids wrote letters to relatives they hadn't spoken to in years. And in thousands of quiet moments around the world, People picked up phones they thought they'd never dial again. A call, a text, a beginning. Not because everything could be fixed overnight, but because someone had stood on a stage, refused to throw his father away for applause, and dared to say, "Love without conditions is the real revolution." Weeks later, under a wide cobalt sky, Elon and Errol walked side by side through the grounds of the new Family First Innovation Center. It wasn't flashy, no marble columns, no gold plaques, just open spaces, bright classrooms, workshops filled with kids learning how to build, how to dream, and, most importantly, how to forgive. A mural stretched across the main hall, a tree with deep twisting roots and bold branches reaching toward a starry sky. At its base, a simple quote: "We carry our past, we build our future." Errol paused in front of it, his hand trembling slightly as he traced the painted words. Elon watched him, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. "You sure you're ready for your speech?" Elon teased gently. Errol chuckled, voice thick. "Son, I barely made it through breakfast without crying." They both laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that stitches old wounds invisible. Later, as the ceremony began, Errol stood on stage. He didn't speak long, just a few raw, unscripted words. "I'm not proud of everything I did, but I'm proud of the son I raised." And when he stepped down, Elon hugged him in front of everyone. No armor, no performance, just two imperfect men standing together, forgiving forward. And somewhere in that moment, in the quiet smiles of the crowd, in the excited shouts of children building rocket models in the classrooms beyond, the real legacy took root. Not money, not fame, not perfection. Love. Messy, stubborn, undefeated love.
If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe for more inspiring stories.